I turned 74 the same way I turned every age before it, quietly, without ceremony, pretending it didn't bother me. But of course it did. Every year after 60 seems to bring some new reminder that time is no longer a distant idea, but something I can feel in my knees, in my breathing, in the way I get tired earlier than I used to. For most of my life, I pushed through it. I grew up in a generation where men didn't talk about aches or exhaustion. You worked, you provided, you showed strength even when you were breaking. I believed slowing down meant I was giving up. I believed pain was something you ignored until it went away or until it became too loud to deny. And so I ignored my body for decades, believing I was being tough. Then one morning last winter, something happened that forced me to see myself differently. I was tying my shoes before a walk when a sudden tightness wrapped around my chest. Not sharp, not traumatic, just a deep, uncomfortable pressure. I sat there on the edge of the bed waiting for it to pass. When it did, I told myself it was nothing. Maybe I moved wrong. Maybe I hadn't slept well. The excuses came easily. They always do for men like me. But later that day, I told my daughter about it. I'm not sure why. Maybe her voice on the phone made me feel 15 again, like if I spoke honestly, she'd help me make sense of it. She got quiet. Too quiet. Then she said, "Dad, you've been tired for months. You don't walk as far as you used to. You forget things. You don't laugh as much. Something isn't right." I opened my mouth to argue, but for the first time I couldn't. Because she was right. And I had known it. That night I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I kept hearing her voice asking me one simple question. Why don't you listen to your body? Not accusing, not dramatic, just wondering. And that question stayed with me like a pebble in my shoe. The truth is, I avoided listening because I was afraid of what I might hear. If I admitted I wasn't invincible, then I had to face that I was aging. And if I faced that, then I had to face everything I still hadn't said, everything I still hadn't done, everything in my life I still carried quietly but heavily. A week later, I finally went to the doctor. I expected a lecture, I expected bad news, but instead he just looked at me with a kind of calm seriousness and said, "Your heart is tired, but it's not too late. The body whispers for years before it starts to shout." That sentence cracked something open in me. I started noticing things I once brushed aside. The heaviness after big meals, the stiffness in the morning, the shallow breaths after climbing stairs, the way my hands trembled slightly when I was anxious. I realized my body had been whispering for a long time, but I had treated those whispers like inconveniences instead of warnings. So I made changes, not dramatic ones, just steady, gentle shifts. I began walking slower, but farther. I started stretching every morning. Nothing fancy, just enough to remind my joints they still mattered. I cooked at home instead of eating whatever was easiest. I drank more water. I slept without guilt. I rested without apology. I learned the difference between being active and being at war with myself. And something surprising happened. For the first time in my life, I felt a kind of peace. Not the peace of accomplishment, not the peace of success. No, a quieter one. A peace that came from finally being on my own side. One afternoon, my grandson asked if I wanted to shoot basketball with him. I almost said no, the way I had so many times before, out of habit, out of fear of slowing him down. But instead I said yes. We shot for 20 minutes, and I was terrible. I missed almost every shot. But I laughed harder than I had in years. And when he hugged me before running inside, he said, You seem happier lately, Grandpa. Happier. Not healthier. Not stronger. Not younger. Happier.
It made me realize something I wish I had learned earlier in my life. Our bodies aren't burdens. They're not machines. They're companions. They're the only ones who walk with us every second of our lives. And for decades, mine had walked alone, while I ignored its exhaustion, its hope, its need for gentleness. I was not wrong to want to stay strong, but I was wrong about what strength actually means. Strength is listening before things break. Strength is slowing down before life forces you to. Strength is choosing care over pride. Strength is letting the people who love you worry, and letting that worry guide you toward better choices. A few weeks ago, my daughter asked me how I was feeling. I told her I felt lighter. Not younger, not perfect, just lighter. She smiled and said, "It's because you finally stopped fighting yourself." Maybe she's right. Maybe that's all aging is. Learning, slowly and painfully, that resisting reality only makes life harder. That ignoring our needs doesn't make us brave. That caring for our health isn't surrender. It's gratitude. Gratitude for every year we've been given. Gratitude for every step we can still take. Gratitude for the fact that we're still here, still breathing, still able to change. I used to fear aging. Now I think it's one of the most honest teachers I've ever had. And if you are like me, if you're in your 60s, 70s, 80s or beyond, maybe this is the moment to stop fighting the body that has carried you for so long. Maybe this is the moment to listen, to soften, to care, because it's never too late. Not at 60, not even at 74, not even at 80. Growing older isn't the end of strength. It's the beginning of understanding. And maybe, just maybe, understanding is the greatest strength we ever learn.